Because there's a lot more conservatives, even among gamers and people on Twitch. It's just that I think a lot of times people don't want to be recognized or being involved in having a particular philosophy or political position on or cultural conflicts because they can cause problems. But, I'm not doing the gaming only stuff anymore. And most of the people who come in here aren't going to be progressives anymore because all of them been scared off. So I kind of figured, if I wanted to do a variety of stuff on my stream and have some conversations, there's little to no consequence to it. You know, I don't have to. I don't have to think in terms of streaming to the broadest audience possible. If a person's offended that I'm a Catholic or that I'm a conservative, then they can go somewhere else. I'm really not in a place to build a stream anymore. So I don't have to do a gaming only kind of thing here on this stream anymore. I was doing that because I thought it was the best way forward for people in general to, if we stream to the broadest audience possible and we kind of just kind of stuck to our games sort of stuff, we could be able to have gaming friends that are across the board a little bit more, I think because I think too often and perhaps there's a lot of people who can do that. There's other people who just they don't want to be involved with those things because they don't have enough people around them who can support them or who can keep it civil. That's the other thing. Be able to have disagreements. I've had people come into the stream, and you can tell by the way they talk that they are more than disagreeing. You can kind of tell just in the word choices, right? Their diction. There's kind of a tone about it that this conversation is probably not going to be very beneficial to the hearers. And one of the things I actually encouraged along the way of various conflicts is that open dialogue should be something that can occur between people. But the thing is they don't want open dialogue. The more progressives don't want open dialogue because they don't want certain ideas discussed. They don't want certain terms and definitions to circulate. They simply want to dominate the concepts and the language and everything. That's why there's a lot of censorship. And while I can be sympathetic, I think there are bad ideas out there too. But at the same time, I want people to be able to look at those bad ideas and see that they're not as good as other ideas. That they don't hold a lot of water, and hopefully not a lot of people will gravitate towards them. But I live in America. This country has been founded on the idea of free speech, where and not just free speech, but freedom of religion. And people have to understand that in order to have one thing free, you sort of have to have some other things free too. I can disagree with a person, but we're both Americans, right? And the same Constitution that gives me the freedom from coercion, freedom from censorship, is what allows another person to share something similar, so that two people can get together and we can have a conversation about things that where two people can be passionate, put forth their best ideas for it, and maybe develop mutual understanding, maybe understand each other's you know. See, either way, I just find it ironic that there are so many things going on that line up with what the Bible says, and people just seem to shrug and say it's just a coincidence. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things in Scripture in terms of like things to avoid, like sin and things like that. And I have found over time that if I engage in the things that Scripture says is sin, or I watch other people who struggle with those things, they tend to be more unhappy, and they tend to be more struggle. They're more susceptible to progressivism and stuff like that. Chelsea says, I'm not super political these days because it's like suicide and Twitch. Yeah, I get it. But you also understand my situation where I don't have anything to lose. Like, what could I possibly lose? Right? And I have everything to gain, actually. I have everything to gain. I can have more conservative friends now. You know? Like, I could actually be on my stream, talk about politics, culture, philosophy, and the people who like me and want to have conversations, that they're the ones that are going to gravitate towards me based on my personality. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of personality playing games. I'm not very vocal. I'm not very entertaining. I usually just stare at the game and might say this or that. Yeah. Hey, Redmond, welcome in. Great to see you. Chelsea says, I'm pretty left-leaning too, but my more libertarian side has me both espousing and defending some right-wing views. Yep, I get that. I have friends who they're more libertarian. They're socially liberal, but fiscally conservative, for instance. I have some libertarian leanings myself, probably owing to the fact that our Constitution kind of has a more libertine kind of you do you, I'll do my kind of thing. And I think for the most part, if people can like leave each other alone, we can like cohabitate a little bit better in the culture. You know what I mean? And so I also have some left-leaning friends too, who aren't even Christian, and I can have conversations with them just like everybody else, because they can handle it, I can handle it, and we're not name calling, and we actually end up respecting each other more through discourse than what can happen with other people shouting matches and I don't know, like people put their emotions first instead of, well, let's do reason first, and yeah. All right, Dragon Ball, thanks for stopping in. You have a good evening as well. Yeah, I'm always here to talk and have some conversations. I appreciate your contribution and questions. Chelsea said, I never liked that it could get me in trouble just to voice some kind of deviation. Yeah, the thing is that some of the positions on the left don't logically owe themselves to the kind of activism that we often see. A person could have a position on something, Let's say a person thinks that a woman has a right to choose an abortion, for instance. But at the same time, have them not also be engaging in a kind of militant activism where the entire idea that a person has must be crammed down the throats of everybody else in America. You know, that's why I tend not to like things to be done at a federal level, because what might be the majority in a blue state or a highly populated area like Los Angeles or New York isn't the same culture, isn't the same political philosophy or the fiscal policies that might work best in more rural areas, less populated areas, more red states. And I think one of the kind of benefits of the United States having separate states as opposed as a complete top-down enforcement of a single rule of law is that each state has its own constitution. It can have its own laws on things. So instead of always trying to fight for federal power and then trying to use the executive branch to force everything on everybody everywhere, I disagree with that lack of vision, that lack of subsidiarity. To the norm online, I mean that like deviation, if anything, that's more protected now. Yeah, I mean, the self-perception stuff is definitely one of those I get it in principle, right? Just like a person's freedom of religion, for example, right? One can come to understand themselves and human nature in a way that can be divorced from external influences. But once again, to go back to my same point, when you try to force other people to have to accept your ideology concerning oneself, I brought up the reverse explanation. The language and concepts I use to understand myself, the way I view myself, the way I understand what I am. Okay, so as a Christian, I believe God created me with an immaterial soul. I'm in the image and likeness of God. And, you know, I understand that I have a fallen nature and I need God to help pull me out and help me be more like Him, to kind of be renewed and restored in the image and likeness of God. But if I tried to cram that down everybody's throat and say, Chelsea, you must accept my ideas about myself. You must accept that I have an immaterial soul, created in the image and likeness of God. You must. And if you don't, or you say anything against it, it's hate speech. Now, the only reason why that, once again, the form of the argument I just made is the same form as what we often see in the militant activism of the progressive left. It's the substance, right, that is different. So if somebody generally just wanted to promote the idea of that nobody should have any external coercion from the government or others for nobody should be asked to violate their conscience and things like that. I think most people would be like, yeah, I think you're completely wrong in what you're thinking. But at the same time, I definitely wouldn't want anybody to try to police my thoughts, because I get to have ideas about myself too. You know, But when you try to cram down everybody, no, this is the only idea and you must accept it. But here's the thing, I get the form. I get the form. Because as a Christian, I apply that to everybody, right? My view of myself, I apply that to everybody. I think you were created with an immaterial soul, created in the image and likeness of God. You don't have to accept that, but I get the form of it. But the difference is, for me, it's just a conversation with you. But for somebody else, you must accept it. You must. You must be fully indoctrinated in it. And if you're not, then you're a bigot. No, that's not how that works. You know, so the form becomes self-referentially incoherent when you try to force upon people things that they claim are being forced upon them. In reality, it's just people having different ideas about themselves, about reality. And oh yeah, we already know there's broad intellectual diversity when it comes to these sorts of questions. This has never been in doubt throughout the history of humanity. We've had conflicting ideas concerning the human person and who we are, where we're going, and why. But the thing is that everybody should be free from coercion, intimidation, and bullying and everything else while they're working that out for themselves. All right, they have an intellect, they have rational capacity. All right, they can engage in thought experiments and reason things out from A to C without being coerced. Yeah, sure, I may disagree with what somebody comes to in terms of C, and somebody will disagree with my C, but we both get to engage in those thoughts, right? We both get to do that. And nobody's saying that, at least not that I know. I don't know anybody who can't do that. Who can't be like, oh yeah, I get to have thoughts. Hey, guess what? That mind over there also gets to have thoughts. And you're not supposed to police their thoughts. Now, obviously, when they lead to like very, and here's the thing. This is one of the problems with the far progressive left, is that it can become very dangerous. Very dangerous. So they'll claim that ideas different than theirs. They'll demonize all the ideas that somebody else has that are contrary to their own as a dangerous ideology. Well, that's fine, because guess what? They think you have a dangerous ideology. So now, are you at an impasse? How about you leave each other alone now? You know. So I kind of like the American political system. You know, people have different ideas that I think are bad ideas. Guess what? I don't think you have a right to dumb ideas, but I think you have a right to think through whatever ideas you want to think through. You know, if I want to pick up a book on a certain subject and read it, you know, I'm certainly people should be welcome to pick up a book and read it. I got caught here. The states are fantastic. All the harder topics that are split almost can't have a chance in the sun. Yep, absolutely. Even if they turn out to be horrible ideas in the end, at least yes, it's something that and it also has local effect only, instead of something that's you know, a cram down from the federal government, which that shouldn't be the way they do it either. You know, I think the federal government has grown too large, and it's very lopsided in how it even functions. Like, you know, there shouldn't be any legislating from the bench and the judicial branch and the executive office, you know, or doing so many executive orders that it's constituting a workaround when things aren't being pushed through through the legislature. I guess it's faster to do the bullying thing, so it's just what lazy minds. Yeah, the thing is, for most of the population, it works. It's pretty much worked on me too. I hate talking politics anymore. Not because I dislike talking about things, but because I hate to see people hurt. Yeah. One of the things that I try to emphasize and when I talk with people is to not be uncharitable, right? You want to steel man the other person's position as much as possible, you know. I think that's a very charitable thing to do, to really understand where they're coming from, what they're thinking, and stuff like that, and just listen. Oh my goodness, you know, if you have an hour to talk to somebody, just listen for 50 minutes, and then maybe ask some questions for 10 minutes, just to get to know the person and where they're coming from, right? Hey Panzer, welcome in. I'll be with you in a moment. I think people tend to get hurt more because of the what I refer to as ideological warfare. You know, and the thing is it doesn't have to be that way. I'll give you an example. So as a Christian, you know, Jesus said, you know, to go into all the world, preach the gospel, teaching them to obey everything I've taught, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There's the Great Commission, right? There's the go into all the world and spread the gospel, you know. So there is that, the form of that idea, that this is a good idea, it needs to be shared with people. But the Catholic attitude towards having conversations is more by way of friendship and dialogue and friends, just having friends and influencing each other over time. It has to be done in the most charitable way possible. And I'll couch this way. I like to put it this way. I'll tell somebody, okay, you disagree with me, right? And you're telling me what you think that's contrary to my own. But you're presenting the information in the most uncharitable way possible, that even if you had a good idea, it's so tainted by rhetoric and disdain for me that it just ruins the, like, if somebody really wanted to convince somebody of something that they're not presently convinced of, we engage in argumentation all the time. I'm not using that in a very negative connotation way, but by means of we engage in logic and presenting facts and things like that all the time. We're influencing each other, you know, even now in this conversation. You know, we're not going to be able to look at each other the same way that we looked at each other prior. You know, hopefully there's greater mutual respect for the good-natured individual underneath our ideas, right? And note, I distinguished the difference between a person and their ideas, right? I don't think we're the sum total of all of our ideations and inclinations. I think there's a clear distinction, which is evidence when people change their mind about things. So yeah, I mean, people don't have to be hurt in having conversations. It's the art of conversation, unfortunately, has been lost on some. And I think part of that comes from having more of a militant activism. All right. Like with Christians, there's the Great Commission, there is a kind of urgency in sharing the gospel with people and being friends with people. I recently lost a friend to suicide. And one of the consoling things I had for myself was that I was willing to be their friend, and even though they were rough around the edges, I opened my heart to them and openly shared ideas, and we talked and stuff, and sometimes our time with each other is much shorter than we think. I've already lost both my parents, and I'm only 40. You just don't know. So there is a kind of urgency in building those relationships, sharing information that we think is going to be vital to other people, something that's really important, particularly because from a Christian perspective, we're speaking about eternal things and things that could occur after death, right? Even if you think I have a hole in my head, at least among friends, we could be like, you would respectfully listen. But I think there's been a kind of a failure, a breakdown. And I think some of it really comes down to, like, sure, we all do, don't we? We all want to kind of shape the culture, right? We want to have an influence on the culture because, like for me, I'm a father of 4 children. Sure, if I can have a positive impact on the culture, be it very small in my local little concentric circles of concern, at work or among friends or among viewers on Twitch or whatnot, if I can have a positive impact on trying to increase the depth and value of dialogue, maybe the culture in which my children grow up in will be more to human flourishing than the kind of conflicts I think we're seeing right now. Chelsea says, and yeah, I still see your question, Panzer. Your question is in queue. If you're still here. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you were online a lot 10 to 15 years ago. I wasn't, but people were a lot more exposed to all kinds of crazy viewpoints, and they weren't hurt to hear it. It was a great time to just disagree with people, and it was fun at the same time. Oh yeah, it's kind of like a smorgasbord of ideas. You can have a field day. You can try some of this here and try a little bit of that there, and be like, "Ugh, that's gross." And I'm using a food analogy. Ideas can be gross too. Yeah, for sure. And here's the thing: I think it's okay for people to have strong convictions. Have the strongest convictions you could possibly have. But the way you treat other people who might have convictions that are contrary to your own, that's broken down. That needs to be built back up. Open dialogue, mutual respect. It just takes time. Oh yeah, that's the other thing, the echo chambers. Yes. Yeah, I need to change the name of my stream to the Echo Chamber. The Echo Chambers. Oh, sure thing, Redmond. Yeah, sure thing. We can get to evolution in a moment. Yeah, I don't know if it's possible to get back to that point online. Yeah. Okay. So I don't watch Matt Walsh a lot just because I don't have time to listen to everybody. I've actually had to pick just a couple. Yeah, just a couple. Oh no, what was my thought? Oh, a couple podcasts. I can't listen to everything, So Matt Walsh got cut from my top 3. Anyways, yes, the internet has actually created a situation where you can have the narrowest focus on your friends. So they check this box, this box, this box, this box, this box, this box, and pretty soon all your friends check all those boxes because you've grouped together in a very narrow, it's like the intersectional idea, you have all these boxes, and so now you have this community that's so specialized, right, and so supported in all of those aspects that it breeds and becomes its own kind of tribalistic us versus them kind of thing, and you either check all the boxes or you don't. Some people aren't as vain as that, but I think that the point is that before the internet, your friends could be a mixed bag of things, and that was good for us. That was actually good for human flourishing. I don't think the technology creating this internet space where we can be so specialized. I mean, there are groups out there that specialize on glamorizing anorexia, for instance. There's websites dedicated to how to hide it from your parents, and you can chat in forums with other people encouraging each other to lose their weight that way and stuff like that. You can find any support for anything now. Like before, if you had this like really strange kink you didn't want anybody to know about or something, now there's an entire community willing with open arms who say, "Oh, we love you." And now there's this culture of acceptance for what otherwise probably would have been just kept secret or just maybe it was something that would just fade off, because in the long run, that probably wasn't a good thing to nurture anyways. Just because we have an ideology doesn't mean that we should entertain it, or that we have an inclination that we should indulge in it, right? Just because it's there doesn't mean we should engage it at all. And the internet's kind of created these little pockets where now you can get supported in anything and everything. So I think it's also has made some people more brazen, right? So let's say you're in a group of 5 people at school. You're all friends. The one thing that you all have in common is soccer. You like to play soccer together during recess. But you all come from different backgrounds on stuff, and every now and then you might squabble about this or that, but for the most part, there is that one thing that you can focus on that can bind you together. And it's being exposed to that intellectual diversity that doesn't, I would say that it leads to greater levels of toleration per se, right? All right, sounds great, Chelsea. Thanks for hanging out, and you're always welcome. Thanks for your contributions. I actually really enjoyed speaking with you tonight.